Imagine for a moment that you are standing in the middle of a very crowded city square. It is noon and the sun is high, but you can hardly see the sky because of the tall buildings and the bright digital screens flashing above you. All around you, there is a constant, heavy wall of sound. You hear the sharp honking of cars, the high-pitched whistle of a train, and the low rolling hum of thousands of people walking and talking at once. Everyone is in a hurry. Everyone has something to say. Everyone is looking at a small, glowing screen in their hand, and from those screens come even more sounds, pings, bells, and the urgent vibrations of notifications. This is the world we have built. It is a world that never sleeps, never pauses, and most importantly, never stays silent. We live in an age of constant response. We feel a strange, heavy pressure to always have an opinion, to always share our thoughts, and to always be on. When we see a photo online, we feel we must comment. When a friend sends a message, we feel we must reply immediately. Even when we are alone in our rooms, the noise follows us. It is the noise of our own thoughts, racing to keep up with the speed of the internet. We think about what we should have said in a meeting, what we will say at dinner, or what we need to explain to someone tomorrow. This constant mental activity is like a fire that never goes out. It burns through our energy. It leaves us feeling tired in a way that sleep cannot fix. This is mental exhaustion. We are tired not because we have walked many miles, but because our minds have been shouting for 16 hours a day. In this noisy world, we have started to fear silence. When a conversation pauses for a few seconds, we feel uncomfortable. We try to fill the space with a joke, a comment about the weather, or a quick look at our phones. We treat silence like an empty room that needs to be filled with furniture. We think silence is a sign that something is wrong. But what if we are looking at it the wrong way? What if silence is not an empty room, but a vast open field full of hidden treasure? What if silence is not nothing, but everything waiting to happen? To grow, especially when learning a deep skill or a new language like English, we must learn to stop the shouting. We must learn that silence is the soil in which the seeds of wisdom are planted. Without the quiet, nothing can take root. Let us travel back in time to a place far away from the glowing screens and the honking cars. High in the mist-covered mountains of the east, there was once a young student named Kyle. Kyle was a bright young man, full of energy and a great desire to learn. He had traveled many days to reach the home of a famous teacher. Kyle wanted to know everything. He wanted to understand the secrets of the stars, the movements of the wind, and the complex grammar of life itself. But Kyle had one great problem. He could not stop talking. From the moment the sun rose over the peaks, Kyle was asking questions. He would ask about the birds, the rocks, the history of the mountains, and the best way to cook rice. Before the teacher could even finish a sentence, Kyle would interrupt with a new idea or a story about his own life. The teacher was a man who moved slowly and spoke very little. He watched the young student with kind, patient eyes. One morning, the teacher stood up and beckoned for Kyle to follow him. "Today," the teacher said softly, "we will go to the high forest. But there is one condition. From this moment until we return, you must not speak a single word. You must keep your lips closed and your mind open." Kyle was surprised. He wanted to ask why. He wanted to ask how long it would take. But he saw the teacher's finger against his lips, and he nodded. They began to walk. At first, the silence was painful for Kyle. As they climbed the steep path, his mind was screaming with words. He wanted to say, "Look at that beautiful blue bird," or "My legs are starting to ache." Every time he saw something interesting, he felt a physical pull in his throat, a desire to turn the sight into a sentence. But he stayed quiet. He watched the back of the teacher's simple robe. As the hours passed, something strange began to happen. Because Kyle was not busy thinking of what to say next, his ears began to change. The big noise of his own voice disappeared, and in its place, the small sounds of the world began to grow louder. He heard the soft, rhythmic crunch of their sandals on the dry pine needles, a sound he had never noticed before. He heard the wind moving through the high branches of the ancient trees, a sound like a long, slow breath. He heard the tiny, metallic click of a beetle moving across a stone. He realized that the forest was not quiet at all. It was a symphony of delicate sounds that he had been too loud to hear. His heart, which had been beating fast with the excitement of talking, began to slow down. His breath became deeper. The heavy mist of his thoughts began to clear, leaving his mind as still and as reflective as a mountain lake on a windless day. He was no longer a person trying to conquer the world with words. He was a part of the world, listening to its secrets. This brings us to a very important lesson for anyone who wishes to learn. There is an old saying that you cannot pour fresh water into a cup that is already full. If a cup is filled to the top with salty water, and you try to pour in sweet, clear water, the sweet water will simply spill over the sides and be lost. Our minds are often like that full cup. We fill them with our own opinions, our own hurried thoughts, and our own constant talking. When we are learning a new language like English, we often try to speak before we have truly heard. We are so busy trying to translate our old thoughts into new words that we don't leave any room for the new language to actually enter our souls. True learning requires a hollow space. It requires us to become like that empty cup. When you stay silent, you are creating a space for the world to teach you. Think about the difference between hearing and deep listening. When we hear, we are just noticing that someone is making a sound. It is like the rain hitting a roof. We know it is there, but we don't think about it. But when we deeply listen, we are doing something much more beautiful. We are offering our silence as a gift to the speaker. In that silence, we notice the tiny details, the way a person's voice rises at the end of a question, the soft rhythm of their sentences, and the emotion behind the words. For an English learner, silence is the ultimate tool. If you are always talking, you are only repeating what you already know. You are walking in circles in your own garden. But when you are silent, you are stepping outside your own walls. You are letting the music of English wash over you. You are noticing how the th sound is like a gentle breeze between the teeth, or how the long vowels stretch out like the horizon at sunset. You are not just learning rules, you are absorbing a new way of seeing the world. This is only possible when the mind is still. When your inner voice stops shouting, your outer ears can finally begin to work. You begin to feel the language instead of just calculating it. Silence also teaches us patience, and patience is the most important friend of growth. A tree does not make a noise when it grows. A flower does not shout when it opens its petals to the sun. Real, deep, lasting change happens in the quiet moments between the big events of our lives. When you sit in silence and allow yourself to simply be, you are giving your brain the time it needs to organize what it has learned. You are allowing the new words and the new ideas to settle into your memory, like dust settling on a shelf after a long day. In the next section, we will explore how this silence changes our character and gives us the power to speak with true authority. When we last left Cale and his teacher, they were standing in the high forest, surrounded by a world of delicate sounds. The young student had discovered that by closing his mouth, he had opened his ears. But there is a second, deeper level of silence that we must understand. It is one thing to stop the words coming out of your mouth. It is another thing entirely to stop the words racing through your mind. As Cale sat on a mossy rock near a small, clear stream, he realized that although he was not speaking, his mind was still very noisy. He was thinking about what he would eat for dinner. He was worrying about whether the teacher was happy with him. He was judging the coldness of the air. This is what we call inner noise. For many of us, this noise is like a radio that is always playing in the background of our lives. It is a constant stream of judgment, memory, and anxiety. To grow, we must learn to turn the volume down on this inner radio. Imagine a pond of water. If you throw a handful of stones into the pond, the water becomes cloudy with mud. You cannot see the bottom. You cannot see the colorful pebbles or the small fish swimming near the sand. Our minds are often like that muddy pond. Every thought, every worry, and every spoken word is like a stone thrown into the water. We live our lives looking at the mud, never seeing the depth beneath. Silence is the act of waiting for the mud to settle. When you stop talking and reacting, the water naturally becomes clear. In that clarity, you finally see yourself. You see your true motivations, your hidden fears, and your deepest strengths. This is the inner mirror of silence. It is uncomfortable at first because we are not used to seeing ourselves so clearly, but it is the only way to build a character that is strong and honest. As Kale sat in the stillness, he began to notice the space between his thoughts. He realized that he did not have to follow every thought that entered his mind. He could watch a thought appear, like a cloud in the sky, and then watch it float away without saying anything about it. He felt a new kind of strength growing inside him, a strength that didn't need to prove itself with loud words or clever arguments. This is the internal strength of silence. It is the ability to be okay with yourself exactly as you are, without needing the constant approval or attention of others. Now, let us consider how this silence affects the way we communicate with others. In our modern world, we often think that the person who speaks the most or the loudest is the person with the most power. But if you observe carefully, you will see that the opposite is often true. Think of a king or a great leader. They do not rush to speak. They do not interrupt. They listen, they wait, and when they finally do speak, their words have the weight of a mountain. This is the power of the sacred pause. Between the moment someone speaks to you and the moment you respond, there is a tiny window of time. Most people jump across this window immediately. They react. They defend themselves. They make a joke. But the wise person lives in that window. When you are learning English, you might feel a rush of blood to your face when someone asks you a question. You want to answer quickly so you don't look slow. But I invite you to try something different. Take a breath, count to 3. Let the silence hang in the air for a moment, like a beautiful curtain. When you pause, you are doing 2 things. First, you are giving yourself the time to find the most beautiful and accurate words. You are moving from reacting to choosing. Second, you are showing respect to the other person. By not rushing to speak, you are saying, "What you said was important enough for me to think about." This creates a deep connection that 1,000 quick words could never build. In English, we have many words, but not all of them are necessary. A single word spoken from a place of silence is more powerful than 100 words spoken from a place of hurry. Cal watched his teacher during their meal. The teacher picked up a piece of fruit, looked at its color, smelled its sweetness, and ate it with total focus. He didn't talk about the fruit, he simply experienced it. This is the art of observation. When we are always talking, we are projecting our own ideas onto the world. We see a tree and we immediately say, "That is a tall oak tree." The moment we name it, we stop looking at it. We think we know it because we have a label for it, but silence allows us to see the unlabeled world. Try this exercise. Look at an object near you right now. Perhaps it is a cup, a pen, or a window. For 1 minute, do not name it in your mind. Do not think about what it is for or where you bought it. Just look at the way the light hits its surface. Look at the tiny scratches, the shadows it casts, and the texture of its material. When you do this, the world becomes much more vivid. It becomes new again. This is exactly how we should approach a new language. Don't just try to find the English label for your old thoughts. Look at the English language itself as if you are seeing a strange and beautiful new bird. Observe the shapes of the mouth, the music of the sentences, and the way the meaning changes with a different tone of voice. By observing without speaking, we become witnesses to life. We start to notice things that others miss. We notice when a friend is sad, even when they are smiling. We notice the subtle beauty of a rainy afternoon. We notice the hidden patterns in a complex English text. This clarity is a gift that only silence can give. If your mind is a busy marketplace, you cannot see the individual faces in the crowd. But if your mind is a quiet gallery, you can appreciate every detail of the painting in front of you. Cale's journey was far from over, but he was beginning to understand that silence was not a punishment, it was a superpower. He felt more alive, more awake, and more connected to the earth than he ever had when he was talking. He realized that his voice was a tool, and like any tool, it is most effective when it is sharp and used with great care. If you use a knife to cut everything from stones to wood to silk, it will soon become dull. But if you keep it protected and use it only when necessary, it will always be ready. Our voices are the same. As we move toward the final part of our narrative, we will look at how silence leads to ultimate growth, how it prepares us to speak our truth with such clarity that the world cannot help but listen. We will see how Cale finally broke his silence and what happened to his voice when he did. For now, stay in this space of observation. Feel the weight of your body on your chair. Listen to the rhythm of your own heart. Remember that you are not just a person who speaks English. You are a person who listens to the world, and that is where your true power begins. 3 days had passed since Cale and the teacher first entered the high forest. For 72 hours, not a single word had crossed the young man's lips. On the morning of the 4th day, as the sun began to paint the mountain peaks in shades of soft pink and gold, the teacher turned to Cale. They were standing at the edge of a great cliff, looking out over the world. The teacher placed a hand on Cale's shoulder and said, "Now you may speak." Cale opened his mouth. At first, there was only the sound of his breath. Then he spoke a single sentence. "The world is much larger than I thought." As the words left his throat, Cale gasped. He did not recognize his own voice. Before this journey, his voice had been thin, fast, and often high-pitched with the energy of wanting to be heard. It was a voice that bumped into things. But now, his voice felt deep, it felt anchored, it had a resonance that seemed to vibrate in his very chest. It was as if the 3 days of silence had acted like a filter, removing all the dust and grit from his speech, leaving only the pure, clear water of his intent. This is the secret of speaking with authority. Authority does not come from the volume of your voice or the number of big words you use. It comes from the weight of the silence that sits behind your words. When you speak after being silent, your words carry the energy of all the thinking and observing you have done. Each word is like a heavy stone dropped into a deep well. It makes a ripple that lasts. In your journey with English, remember this. The goal is not to speak as much as possible. The goal is to speak so that when you do, people cannot help but listen. When you cultivate silence, your English stops being a performance and starts being a connection. You no longer worry about making a small grammar mistake because you are focused on the truth of what you are saying. Your confidence no longer comes from your skills, but from your presence. This is the shift from being a student to being a communicator. the teacher and Kale began their walk back down the mountain, returning to the village. As they moved closer to the homes of men, the noise began to return. They heard the barking of dogs, the calling of merchants, and the laughter of children. Kale felt the familiar urge to join in, to start talking and sharing his adventures. But then he remembered the inner pond he had discovered. He realized that he could hear the noise of the village without letting it disturb the stillness of his heart. This is the most important part of our journey. We cannot stay on the mountain forever. We must return to the crowded city squares, the busy offices, and the digital screens. But the goal of learning silence is not to run away from the world. It is to build a sanctuary inside yourself that you can take anywhere. Imagine that inside your heart, there is a small, quiet room. No matter how many notifications flash on your phone, no matter how many people are shouting around you, you can always step into that room. In that room, you are calm. In that room, you are a deep listener. In that room, your English is perfect because it is silent. When you are in a difficult conversation or a stressful English exam, take a second to step into that internal room. Take one breath. Find that stillness. Then step back out and speak. You will find that you are much more effective because you are operating from a place of peace rather than a place of panic. As you move forward from this narrative, I want you to practice the architecture of silence in your daily life. It does not require you to go to a mountain. You can start with 5 minutes. Every morning, before you check your phone, sit in silence. Do not think about your to-do list. Do not practice your English vocabulary. Just listen to the silence of the room. Notice the light. Notice your breath. This 5-minute fast from words will prepare your mind for the day ahead. During your day, find pockets of silence. When you are walking to the bus, don't put on your headphones. Just walk. When you are waiting for your coffee, don't look at your phone. Just wait. These small moments are like recharging stations for your soul. They prevent the mental exhaustion we talked about at the beginning. They keep your cup from becoming too full of salty water, so that when you sit down to study or speak, you have room for the sweet water of new knowledge. And finally, remember the story of the cup. If you find yourself struggling with a new concept in English, or if you feel frustrated that you are not improving fast enough, stop. Stop trying to force the language into your head. Instead, become hollow. Stop talking to yourself about how hard it is. Stay silent. Listen to a podcast or a song in English without trying to translate every word. Just let the sound exist. In that space of non-effort, the language will often find its own way in. Growth is not something you do. It is something that happens when you create the right conditions. Kale lived the rest of his life as a man of few words, but those words changed the lives of everyone who heard them. He became a teacher himself, not by writing long books, but by showing his students how to find their own silence. He taught them that the most beautiful music is the melody that emerges from the quiet, and the most powerful speech is the one that honors the space between the words. You are now at the end of this script, but you are at the beginning of a new way of being. As you go back to your life, your studies, and your conversations, carry a piece of this mountain with you. Be proud of your silence. Use your pauses like a master artist uses shadows, to give depth and beauty to the light. The world is noisy, but you do not have to be. You have the power to stay quiet, to listen deeply, and to grow into the person you were always meant to be. Stay silent for a moment longer. Feel the air on your skin. Listen to the very last echo of my voice. And then, when you are ready, step back into the world and speak your truth with the strength of a silent mountain. Thank you for traveling with us through the silence today. If these words brought peace to your heart or clarity to your mind, please consider subscribing to our channel to join our community of deep listeners. By clicking the like button, you help this message reach others who are searching for their own quiet space in a noisy world. We would love to hear from you. What did you discover in your moment of silence today? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Until we meet again, walk in peace, listen with your heart, and speak with purpose.